Regent's College.
Yeah, pleasure. First of all, I've got to get you to write my press release. That's for sure. Thank you very much for the kind intro. As you said, I started out modeling very young. I had grown up in a town called Seattle in the States, Northwest States, and I was scouted by a company called Elite, which is quite a big agency in the modeling world. And went and did that. I traveled to Tokyo when I was 14, modeled there. Always during my summer holidays, I always paid attention to my university, or university schooling, I swear to God. And during summer holidays, I would go and travel overseas, like as a model. So that threw me into the fashion world. And I tried to pay attention to more than just being a model. Paying attention to the stylist, paying attention to how a shoot comes together, paying attention to the commercial side of it. And then I moved to London, and I was about, I would say 20 then. I moved to London, was doing a bit of modeling, getting really sick of it, and wanted to have more control over my life. And I decided to finish up my university here. I'd done like distance education, so I did finish it up here. Regent's College appealed to me. It's okay, come in. Don't worry. I won't mark down your grade, I swear to God. Appealed to me because of the location. First of all, it accepted, I went to RACL at that time. I don't think it exists anymore, but it accepted my American credits, and then the location was key. I don't think you can find a better location for college in London. And I started my first label when I was in university here. That's because somebody that was in my life said, you've got a really good head for business. If you wanted to start a fashion label, I think that you could start it and run it. I said, well, that's funny because I actually have an idea. And it happened that the idea that I had was not just me thinking it was the right thing, it was what the market thought was the right thing. So I went out and started this label, Degrees of Freedom, knowing absolutely nothing about what I was doing. I just had a couple of connections, and I had a little bit, well, I had a bit of seed money to figure out that I needed a designer, a proper designer, because I'm more of like a creative director, and eventually a pattern cutter. And then I called on, put together a range, and called one contact for Harvey Nichols, and that was my first stockist, and then from the ground up learned everything. And I can remember having like really scary conversations with Saks Fifth Avenue, being like, so is that FOB, and are we on 30 days? And I'd be like, I don't know what she's talking about.
But you're being tremendously modest here. I mean, it is some people work their whole careers to get a label off the ground, and within 2 seasons, it's documented that Noelle's business was 1.5 million in sales revenue, and was being stocked in Saks, Villa Moda, pretty much all around the world, which is an incredible feat to achieve. From a starting point of being, kind of part-time student or part-time businesswoman, whichever you want to say, is equally amazing. So I suppose what I'm trying to get at is, what was driving you at the time? I mean, yeah, you had the seed money and the idea, and maybe circumstances, but what drove you to want to do that?
Well, I mean, circumstances are always difficult, I think, first of all. I think it's always easy to look into something and think that for some reason that circumstance is easier than mine. I don't subscribe to that. What was driving me, I think, they call it ambitious in the States. Over here, that's a very bad word if you're a female. I think that I wanted to build a company of my own, and the freedom and the responsibility that comes with that. I don't know if that answers, or what.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think we would conclude that you're a natural entrepreneur, perhaps, and maybe.
Or totally unemployable.
We kind of move on a bit, and we can come back to degrees of freedom, because you then partnered up with Zandra Rhodes, who's an iconic British designer, and not one of the most conventional ones either, I have to say. So can you tell us a bit about how that came to be?
I met Zandra, I sold my company in 2008. Beginning of 2009, I met Zandra Rose through a mutual friend of ours who sits on the British Fashion Council, and who her last job capacity was brand director for ASOS. Mm-hmm. And I credit this lady with building ASOS to what it is, which I mentioned because I know you want to get onto the high street at some point. And I hit it off with Zandra straight away. I knew from building Degrees of Freedom from an absolute idea that I wanted to have my next venture be something that had some heritage. You also have to remember this is 2009, so we've hit the recession. So anything you're going to do in fashion has to have some sort of brand equity. And to build something from zero, it's hard to build that sort of brand equity within. Well, it doesn't happen overnight, really.
Particularly in the luxury market.
Yeah. And what I was doing is I was diffusing her luxury, because she does a very high-end range. She always has done. And and then she'll license things. She never did her own proper diffusion range. And that's what Z by Zandra Rhodes was. And she loved the idea. And that's how we got started as partners in the company.
Okay, you move from a position where you're working for yourself and you're in charge to working with someone, and much as there may have been a partnership element to it, you're still having to cross-reference check. How did that work? Without spilling too many confidences.
It's always interesting, a partnership. No, it's good. Honestly, I'd rather be in a partnership. And to this day, I would rather be in some sort of partnership with somebody, even if it's not 50-50, or having another person to call on when you're on the scary road of doing it you're on your own is huge. And I've learned to call on advice from all sorts of friends of mine, whether it be close friends that work in the industry or people I look up to in the industry. I've learned to ask for advice. So in a way, having partnership is great. In a bad way, if you guys don't see eye to eye on a very important decision for the company, then things usually go awry. So, yeah.
I mean, Zandra Rhodes is typical of kind of the eclectic British fashion or English fashion designers, like Vivienne Westwood, for example. They're not widely understood around the world. I mean, how do you see English or British fashion compared with, say, other fashion brands from around the world? Do you think it's quite distinctive?
Oh, how do I see British brands compared to global brands? Well, I mean, okay, global brands is a really kind of tough term, because I don't feel like there's many brands that are truly, well, how are they compared to New York brands? How are they compared to French brands, do you mean, or Italian, or just generally how do British stand out in the crowd?
That there's a degree of eccentricity associated with English designers like Paul Smith, Westwood.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's any secret that most people would say that British fashion is always embraced for eccentricity and how avant-garde it is, and I think that's great, and it's got its position in the fashion world as that. Thankfully, we also have a really great high street, because if you were just avant-garde and eccentric, we'd all be eating canned, beans on toast every single day of our lives. And so, luckily, we have a high street too. And that relationship is, with the British Fashion Council, is very much washes each other's hands,
Yeah.
should I say. I don't think most people know, but the British Fashion Council is largely funded by Topshop. So there's some politics there. Some of it's great. I've seen a lot of, like, I remember I met Christopher Kane when he had done his first show, and he was nobody. And now, I mean, he's such a lovely person. His sister's his partner. But, and that's thanks to the BFC, which is great. There's some people that have problems with that. Some of the off-site fashion sort of, you know, like your Vauxhall or your on-off, because there's a support of, well, because it is quite political, the BFC in a way.
I mean, some people, rightly or wrongly, have a view that luxury fashion is all about Europe. The Americans do it bigger and better, and so the British fashion, London Fashion Week is mostly about eccentric individuals that are to some degree confined to the UK, like Jasper Conrad, or, you know, up-and-coming star talent from Central St Martin's. I mean,
Yeah.
to what extent is that view one you recognise?
Well, I think that Jasper Conrad is a business. I wouldn't see him. Yeah, I think it's all the people in between. There's so many shows that happen at London Fashion Week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think about what journalist I was talking to. I think it was WWD yesterday. And she's like, I don't even go to the shows. We don't even go to the shows. There's no point. There's too many of them. We can all watch it online within minutes or live stream. I think there were 72 shows that were live stream over London Fashion Week. What is the point of going? So sorry, going back to...
I think it's really about sort of perceptions of the fashion weeks. So the luxury fashion being largely dominated by Paris and Milan.
Right.
And you know, sort of London being, until recently.
Well, you do have some great people who are British brands that have come back or have stayed in London, like your Matthew Williamson has come back from New York. Burberry has come back and is here. I think that's great, because the most important thing, because I think about it all as a business, you know what I mean, is you want the buyers to have a reason to come to London. Otherwise, Neiman isn't going to come through if you don't have the Burberry show here.
Yeah. I mean, we should say, for explanation, Burberry typically showed their ready-to-wear collections in Milan for many years, and only recently has come back. So there was always a bit of a discussion about how influential London Fashion Week was compared with the others.
Funny enough, though, Topshop is actually quite a big pull too.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah,
is.
I mean, their unique collection was one of the first high street brands to do that. I'd love to talk to you about fashion all night, but let's bring it back a bit. I mean, obviously you were here in Regent's College at BACL, which I think now is RACL. I've only been here since September, so I can't talk with authority on that. But I mean, you remember student life here clearly, but what was it that sort of you got from this place?
I was never a good student. I don't think I was. I don't know, there's a couple of people up here that can verify that. I don't think I was.
It's a very narrow definition of good student, probably linked to attendance, no doubt.
Yeah, kind of. Well, that was the thing, is like, I've got to go to this meeting with this buyer, I can't come to class, please don't flunk me. Well, it was, I think